They say airports are places where people meet and part ways, but nobody tells you that airports are also courts, where hearts are judged and blood is denied. I stood among strangers, holding a paper with my son's name written by hands that once carried him through hunger and rain. I had not seen his face for 7 years, not since he left with dreams heavier than our only suitcase. I was not afraid of the crowd. I was afraid of his eyes because a mother can survive poverty, cold, hunger, and silence. But she cannot survive being forgotten by the child she gave her life to. I stood there pretending to be strong while my knees whispered that they were tired, my back whispered that it remembered. Too many long nights, my hands whispered that they had worked more than they had rested. People passed me dressed in confidence and perfume, while I wore memories stitched into old cloth. I wondered if my son still remembered the smell of our small kitchen, the sound of my prayers at night, the way I used to sing to him when thunder shook our broken windows. I wondered if success had washed away the sound of my voice. I wondered if money had taught him a new language, where mothers are replaced by mirrors and love is replaced by applause. I remembered the night he left the bus station, his bag bigger than his courage, his eyes pretending to be brave, his hands shaking while holding my fingers like a child holding the last piece of home. He said, "I will come back rich, mother." I said, "Come back human." My son's 7 years passed like slow rain falling on the same wound. Letters became shorter, calls became formal, his voice changed, mine stayed the same, old soft waiting. Then the doors opened, cameras screamed his name, people rushed like waves chasing gold, and there he was, my child, wearing money like armor, surrounded by power, looking untouchable. I forgot how to breathe, I forgot how to stand, forgot how old I only remembered how to be a mother. My feet moved before fear could stop them. My heart ran ahead of my body. Daniel, I whispered. My voice was small, but my soul was loud. He turned, and in his eyes I saw something colder than winter. Not anger, not love, but distance. The kind that grows when hearts move to different worlds. He looked at me like I was a mistake, walking like dust that had learned to speak. I smiled anyway, because mothers always smile before they bleed. Lifted my hand slowly, the same hand that once drew letters on his back so he could sleep, the same hand that wiped blood from his knee when he fell, the same hand that sold its wedding ring so he could buy books. And then he said the words that broke time. I do not know this woman. Something inside me folded, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like a letter never opened. My soul did not shatter loudly, it collapsed quietly, like a house that has been burning for years. Security touched my arms as if I was a problem to remove, not a mother to understand. My bag fell, photographs slid across the floor like wounded memories escaping shame. One picture showed me young, holding him in Raynon, showed him smiling with missing teeth. One showed our broken house with hope sitting on the doorstep. Shoes stepped near them, but no one bent to read them. People stared, phones rose, laughter hid behind hands. Someone said she is crazy, someone said she wants money, someone said poor woman, nobody said mother. I bent slowly, my knees argued, my back cried, my hands shook. I picked up my past, I placed it back into a bag that had carried too many dreams, and I walked away while my heart stayed behind on the cold airport floor. Outside, the sky was wide, the city was loud, life was normal only. A mother was missing from her own story. I did not cry outside because tears are expensive and I had already paid too much in this life. I walked until my feet forgot pain. I walked until my thoughts became heavy. I walked until memory became louder than reality. Then I sat in a black car while the city celebrated him in lights taller than hope. The driver opened the door and said, "Madame," a name I never owned, a name that never knew my hands. The door closed, the city disappeared behind dark glass, and the woman the world thought was poor disappeared too inside. The moving silence closed, changed around my tired body, silk replacing cotton, diamonds replacing dust, not to show power but to remove disguise. I looked at my reflection, the same eyes, the same tired mouth. Only the world around me had changed, not My heart, I entered a quiet hall where men spoke softly but moved mountains. With numbers, walls were made of confidence, lights were made of power, air smelled like control. My son stood there, laughing, glass in hand, surrounded by respect, borrowed from money. He was telling a story, everyone was listening. Nobody knew the woman who taught him. His first word was standing behind the door. Then he saw me again. This time his breath failed him, not because of love, but because of understanding. Silence grew heavy like truth entering a room. The chairman stood and spoke my name, Eleanor Williams Silent. Investor, founder, owner of 40% of the company that made him a king. His glass fell from his hand and broke, but nobody listened because his soul was louder. Color left his face, strength left his shoulders, pride stepped back. The boy stepped forward. He walked toward me slowly, like a child walking into truth. Mother, he whispered, not loudly, not proudly, but broken. I looked at him with eyes that had buried hunger and raised dreams. I wanted to see if you would recognize your mother before you recognized money. His knees touched the floor, not for wealth, not for cameras, but for the first time for shame. I did not raise you to be rich. I raised you to be kind today. You are powerful, but you are poor where it matters. My voice did not shake because pain had already finished teaching me how to speak calmly. I turned away, not from hatred, not from revenge, but from the need to let pain become a teacher behind me. I heard him crying like the boy who once cried when thunder touched the sky. That night he did not sleep. In glass towers, he sat alone with old photos and shaking hands, remembering cold nights and warm arms, empty kitchens and full prayers. He touched my younger face with fingers that once held toys. He remembered the smell of soap, the sound of my breath. When he was sick, the way I covered him with my own coat and winter morning, found him back at the airport alone, holding a sign that said, I am sorry, Mom. And this time the world was quiet, no cameras, no guards, no gold, only truth. I stood across from him wearing the same simple coat because love never changes clothes. He saw me and he did not look away. He ran to me, not as a king, not as a billionaire, but as a child returning from a long, wrong road. He held me like a child escaping darkness, like a heart escaping noise, like a soul escaping loneliness. I closed my eyes, not as a billionaire, not as an investor, but as a mother who finally held her lost heart again. I remember the day he was born. The hospital smelled like bleach and hope. My hand shook as I held him for the first time, tiny, fragile, and screaming as if he already knew the world could be cruel. I held him close and promised him nothing but myself. Nothing but warmth, nothing but love, because everything else in this world could be taken away, and I knew I would not let him be empty of me. Our home was small, a single room with broken windows and a roof that leaked when it rained. We had no toys, no books, no fancy clothes, just each other and a hunger that whispered through every night. I worked day and night, selling fruits, cleaning houses, washing dishes, doing anything to make sure he had bread, and he had a dream, and he had hope, and he had May remember teaching him words on torn pieces of paper, the alphabet written with a pencil that had almost no lead. I remember drawing pictures of trees and animals and telling him stories of kings and queens, of heroes who were brave. Even when no one saw them, I wanted him to believe that the world could be more than walls and hunger, that his heart could be richer than money. School was not kind to him. He wore the same clothes over and over. Other children laughed at him, called him poor, called him names. I remember waiting outside the gate, watching him hide behind other kids while tears rolled down his cheeks. I wanted to run in and fight for him, but I had no fists left, no power left. I had only my love and my prayers. I whispered inside the small chapel of our neighborhood, asking the universe to protect him, to give him courage, to let him rise, even when the world tried to break him. And rise he did. He worked harder than anyone I'd ever seen. Even at 6 years old, he would help me count coins at night. He would carry the basket of laundry up the stairs. He would learn words from books that I could barely understand. I remember the first time he solved a math problem that was too hard for his class and looked at me with a smile that said, "Mother, do you see I am trying?" I smiled back, holding back tears, because I saw him growing wings that the world had tried to cut. We left our country for this city. I remember the long bus ride, the cold nights, the strange faces. The language, I could barely speak, the fear in his eyes when the police stopped us at checkpoints. I held his hand tighter than ever, whispering that everything would be fine, that we were together, and together we could survive anything, even hunger. Even cold, even loneliness. I found work cleaning offices at night while he slept with the light on, reading borrowed books. I remember standing on the roof of our apartment, looking at the city lights, thinking one day he would walk those streets, not afraid, not poor, not hungry, thinking that the city belonged to him in some way that only courage could claim. I promised him silently I would protect him, I would guide him, I would give him wings. He started school here in the city. The language was foreign, the rules were strange, the teachers kind, sometimes cruel, the other children loud and quick to judge. I watched him struggle and fail and stand again. He did not cry in front of them. He came home and cried silently in my arms. I whispered words that did not belong to me, but to every mother in the world. You are my son. You are more than money. You are more than their words. You are everything. At 14, he discovered technology. I remember him taking apart a broken radio and then a broken computer, his eyes lighting up as if he had found magic. I bought him tiny pieces with the money I could earn, and he built something that hummed, something that worked, something that made him proud. I remember sitting on the floor watching him and realizing this child would not be stopped by walls or poverty or lack of language. He would rise no matter what, and I would be there, silently cheering, silently sharing, silently loving. There were nights he cried for the first time as he realized the world was bigger than our small room. The teachers laughed at him. The other kids teased him. He wanted to give up. I held him close and whispered that failure is not the end. Failure is the teacher. Failure is the bridge to the sky. He looked at me with wet eyes and nodded slowly, like a king learning the rules of his kingdom. I promised silently that I would not let anyone break his spirit. I worked every night, every day, every moment I could to give him what I could not give. Before I cleaned offices, I washed dishes, I sold fruits. I begged, I borrowed, I did everything while he slept and dreamed. I remember one night he woke me saying, "Mother, I want to create a company. I want to change the world." I wanted to stop him. I wanted to say dreams are dangerous, but I smiled and said, "Then change the world, my son. I will follow you with my heart always." And he did. He rose from small inventions to larger ideas, to companies that made him a billionaire. But the world he entered was cold and harsh, and he forgot sometimes the woman who carried him through storms, the hands that wiped his tears, the arms that held him when he was small and scared. I waited silently. I watched proudly and silently. I suffered because love is not always celebrated. Love is sometimes hidden. Love is sometimes tested. I watched him walk past me in airports, ignore me in streets, pretend not to know me in front of cameras, in front of men, in suits, in front of the world. I could have shouted. I could have begged. I could have fallen to the floor, but I did not, because mothers know that dignity is stronger than pride, and silence can teach lessons that words cannot. Every investment I made, every secret company, every hidden share I owned was for him. I gave him wealth he would never suspect. I gave him power he would never see. I gave him wings and a heart still untouched by greed, because I knew that when he finally saw me, he would see not a poor woman, not a servant, not someone beneath him, but the mother who had given everything and asked for nothing. And the moment came at the airport when he saw me and did not recognize me. He stepped back. He pushed me away. He spoke words that cut deeper than knives. He said, "I do not know this woman," and my heart did not break loudly. It folded quietly. It waited for the right time for the lesson to arrive, for the truth to unfold, and I smiled behind my pain, because mothers know patience is the only weapon stronger than time. He grew fast, and the world around him grew faster. I watched silently from the shadows of small offices and quiet nights. While he built things larger than I had ever imagined, I watched his fingers type faster than my heart could follow. I watched. His eyes sparkle with excitement for inventions that could change lives, for companies that could rule markets, for ideas bigger than our small kitchen ever held. And I knew my child was becoming the man I had always dreamed. He would remember the nights he called me from a borrowed phone, whispering about the first money he earned, the first success, the first moment someone noticed him. I could hear pride in his voice, but also something else, something heavy, something that sounded like distance. I smiled softly because mothers understand that the world teaches children to walk alone, even when they have not learned how to run yet. Bought our old neighborhood toys secretly. I sent books under false names. I paid for small courses and mentors without him knowing. I built a ladder he could climb without touching the ground of poverty. I gave him wings silently and invisibly, like the wind carrying a kite high into the sky. Years passed like rivers carving valleys. He grew taller, stronger, smarter, richer. I saw the shadow of a boy I once knew slowly fade under the weight of fame, under the roar of applause, under the glitter of cameras, and I waited. I waited because mothers know the right moment always comes the day he returned. To the airport, the city buzzed louder than usual. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted names, his name, Daniel Williams, the boy who built empires before he was 30. And I stood among the crowd, older, smaller, quieter, holding a simple piece of paper, with my hand shaking from hope and fear and love. I had not seen him for 7 years, not since he left carrying dreams heavier than our broken luggage. I stepped forward when I saw him. I whispered, "Daniel, my son," my voice trembling, my heart racing. And he turned, and in his eyes I saw something I had never seen before, something cold, something sharp, something that felt like betrayal. He looked at me like I was dust. He looked at me like I was invisible. He looked at me like the mother who raised him was nothing, and I smiled, because mothers always smile before they bleed. I lifted my hand slowly, the same hand that wiped blood, the same hand that held fevered heads, the same hand that taught him courage in small moments, the same hand that sold its only ring to buy him books and food and hope. He stepped back and spoke words that cut through time. I do not know this woman, and the world seemed to stop. My soul did not break loudly. It folded quietly like a bird that had been flying for years without risk. Security touched my arms like I was a problem, like I was an object, like I was nothing. My bag fell to the floor, photographs spilled out, memories of laughter, of tears, of hunger, of love, of nights without sleep, of days without bread. The world looked at me, but nobody saw me, not really saw me, the mother, the woman, the life behind the story. I walked away, carrying my heart quietly. I did not cry because mothers know tears can be too expensive, and I had already paid too much for love. I sat in a black car while the city celebrated him in lights, taller than hope, while he walked past cameras and applause like a king ignoring his own queen. The driver called me Madam, a name I never owned, a title I never wanted. I changed my clothes silk, replacing cotton, diamonds, replacing dust, not to show power, but to reveal the truth. I entered a quiet hall where men moved mountains with numbers and deals, and he was there, laughing, glass in hand, surrounded by respect borrowed from money. And I stepped inside, and the air changed the same way it always does when the truth stands in the room. He saw me again, and his breath failed him, not because of love, but because recognition hit him like a storm. Silence grew heavy. The chairman spoke my name, Eleanor Williams, silent investor, founder, hidden owner of 40% of the company that made him a king. His glass fell from his hand and shattered, but nobody noticed because his soul was louder. He walked toward me slowly, Like a child walking into truth, "Mother," he whispered, not proudly, not loudly, but broken. I looked at him with eyes that had buried hunger and raised dreams. I wanted to see if he would recognize me before he recognized money, before he recognized fame, before he recognized the world I raised him to see. His knees touched the floor, not for gold, not for applause, not for anyone, but for the first time, for shame, for love, for realization. "I did not raise you to be rich," I said. "I raised you to be kind today. You are powerful, but you are poor where it matters." I turned away, not from anger, not from revenge, but from the need to let pain become a teacher. He cried silently, holding old photographs, remembering cold nights and warm arms, empty kitchens. In full prayers, he remembered the smell of soap, the sound of my breath when he was sick, the way I covered him in winter, the way I held him when the thunder roared, the way I whispered words of courage into his heart every day without applause. Every night, without sleep, morning came quietly. The city awake, the world unaware, and he returned to the airport alone, holding a sign that said, "I am sorry, Mom," and this time the world was silent. No cameras, no guards, no applause, only truth, only love. Only the child who had finally remembered the mother who had never left him, even when he pretended she had. He stood across from him, wearing the same simple coat, because love never changes clothes. He ran to me, not as a billionaire, not as a king, not as a man who conquered the world, but as a child returning from a long-lost road. He held me like a heart escaping darkness, like a soul escaping noise, like a spirit finding home. I closed my eyes, not as a billionaire, not as an investor, not as a queen, not as a legend, but as a mother who finally held her lost heart again. I remember the nights I stayed awake, counting coins while he slept, the sound of his breathing, a lullaby that reminded me why the world could be cruel and also why it could be beautiful. I remember the tiny apartment where we shared a single blanket, where cold seeped through broken windows, where hunger whispered in our ears, and I promised silently I would carry it all for him. I would carry cold nights. I would carry empty stomachs. I would carry fear. I would carry every pain so he could rise. I remember the first time he cried in my arms after school. The other children laughed at him, called him names. He buried his face in my chest, and I held him tighter than ever, whispering, "Do not forget who you are. Do not forget love. Do not forget courage. Do not let the world take your heart." I promised him that no matter what, he would always have home, and that home was me. There were years when I worked in silence, cleaning offices at night, washing dishes, scrubbing floors, while he dreamed. Dreams larger than the sky. I sent him to school with books. I could not afford shoes. I could not replace clothes that were always too small, and yet I smiled every morning, watching him walk to the bus stop like a king who did not know he was already crowned. When he discovered technology, I remember sitting on the floor, watching him take apart radios, computers, anything that hummed and glowed, and he turned pieces into magic, his small hands creating something bigger than his own world. And I knew then that the boy I held in my arms was destined for greatness. I whispered silently, "Do not forget me, my son. I am here always." Years passed faster than we could hold them. He built companies, he built empires, he built fame and wealth while I remained hidden in shadows, giving him wings he did not see, giving him strength he did not know existed, giving him love he thought was invisible. Airport confrontation had shattered the world outside, but inside me it was only patience unfolding the boy I raised had forgotten to look at the woman who had given everything for him, and that was his lesson to learn. I allowed the world to see only a poor stranger, and I allowed him to learn the weight of forgetting a mother when he finally fell to his knees, when recognition hit him, when tears rolled down his face, and he whispered, "Mother." I felt the years of waiting collapsing into seconds. I felt the nights of hunger melting into warmth. I felt the fear of losing him, replaced with the relief of holding him again. I held him tight and whispered, "It is okay. It is okay, my son. It is always okay now. Sat together later in silence in the same airport hall, where he had denied me, where he had stepped back, where he had turned away, and I watched him read old photographs, his hands shaking, his eyes wide. He touched the pictures of a child. He once was a home. He once knew a mother. He once ignored. I let him see it all. I let him touch it all. I let him remember everything. I remembered every sacrifice. I made every sleepless night, every penny spent, every piece of myself I gave for him, and I realized the world outside would never understand. But it did not matter because he now understood it. I saw it in his eyes, the boy who had built walls of gold and glass, now kneeling in front of love, invisible to the world, but visible to him mourning. Light filled the hall as he held my hands for the first time in years. Without fear, without pride, without shame, just pure realization, and I whispered, "It is okay, my son. It is always okay now." And he looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I never saw you." I never knew, I never understood, and I held him and said, "I know, my son. I know now you see now, you know." We walked out of the airport together slowly, not as billionaire and mother, not as king and queen, not as rich and poor, but as human. Beings bound by blood, bound by love, bound by years of sacrifice and waiting. And he leaned his head on my shoulder, and I held him tight, and the city around us continued to rush and roar and shine and glitter. But we were quiet, we were together, we were home. I whispered one last time, "Do not forget who you are, do not forget where you come from, do not forget love, do not forget courage." And he nodded silently, tears falling softly onto his hands that once held toys and books and dreams. And I smiled quietly because finally, the boy I had raised, the child I had carried through hunger and cold and fear, had returned to me. And in that moment, the world did not matter. The money did not matter. The fame did not matter. All that mattered was that he was here. He was mine. He was my son, and I was his mother, and nothing could ever take that away. I closed my eyes, breathing him in, feeling every heartbeat, remembering every night, every morning, every tear, every smile, every small moment that had led us here. And I knew finally that all the sacrifices, all the waiting, all the love, all the pain had been worth it, because love always finds its way home. And we walked together into the light of a new day, a day where forgiveness replaced pride, where love replaced distance, where mothers and sons finally meet again. Not in stories, not in photographs, not in memories, but in real arms. Holding real hearts, holding real lives, holding each other finally.